All right, if you've been sleeping on this team, now might be the time to wake up. Because what happened last season doesn't really tell the full story. Not even close. There's something building here. Something that feels way bigger than what people are giving credit for. And if a couple things finally click this year, this could get scary fast. So sit back and get comfortable, because I'm going to tell you what's going on here. Click the like button and comment below. SKOL Vikings. There's something quietly building inside the Minnesota Vikings right now. And if you're not paying close attention, you might miss just how dangerous this team is about to become. Because beneath a 9-8 record that didn't even make the playoffs, there's a reality that should make the entire NFL uncomfortable. This team was far better than its record suggests, and the pieces now falling into place could flip everything. Let's start with the boldest, but most important, premise coming out of this analysis. If Kyler Murray delivers top 10 quarterback play this season, the Minnesota Vikings are not just competitive. They are legitimate contenders. That's not hype. That's based on what this team already proved last year under far worse circumstances. Think about it. This team went 9-8 despite having one of the worst quarterback situations in the entire league. We're talking instability, inconsistency, and a lack of production that held back an otherwise complete roster. Now imagine plugging in top-tier quarterback performance into that same infrastructure. Suddenly, you're looking at a top 10 offense paired with what could realistically be a top 5 defense. That combination, that's the blueprint of a contender. And that defense, it deserves serious attention. Under Brian Flores, the Vikings didn't just improve. They evolved into one of the most disruptive units in football. This wasn't a defense loaded with elite, top-tier talent across the board. In fact, from a pure personnel standpoint, it's closer to middle of the pack. But the way Flores deploys his scheme, that's what changes everything. Quarterbacks today can make every throw. Arm talent is no longer the separator in the NFL. Processing is. And Flores attacks that exact weakness better than anyone. His system confuses reads, disguises pressure, and forces hesitation. That's why even experienced quarterbacks struggled, and why younger ones had no chance. And the numbers back it up. Top 10 in points allowed per game. Second in yards allowed. Elite sack rates. Strong takeaway production. Even with some inconsistency that suggests there's still upside if turnover luck evens out. But what really stands out? The way this defense closed the season. Over the final stretch, they allowed just one passing touchdown across 6 games. One. They averaged only 13 points allowed per game during that span. They generated 22 sacks and forced 12 turnovers. That's not just good. That's dominant. And it wasn't against weak competition either, with matchups against teams like the Detroit Lions during that run. For a moment there, this wasn't just a top defense. It looked like the best defense in the entire league. And yet, there's still a flaw. If there's one concern heading into next season, it's stopping the run. Teams clearly identified it as the path of least resistance. The Vikings were the most run-against defense in the NFL, facing over 31 carries per game, while they still held opponents to around 4 yards per carry, a respectable number. The sheer volume exposed them in key moments. That's where the offseason, and especially the draft, becomes critical. There's a strong case that Minnesota should go defense with its top picks, reinforcing areas like the secondary and linebacker depth. Names like Dylan Damon and Jacob Rodriguez emerge as ideal fits, players who could elevate the versatility and intelligence of this defense within Flores' system. Especially Rodriguez, a do-it-all linebacker with elite communication skills and blitzing ability, who could eventually become the centerpiece of the unit. Because here's the truth. This defense is already elite schematically. if the talent level rises even slightly, it could become overwhelming. Now, step back and look at the full picture forming here. An elite defensive mind in Flores. A potentially explosive upgrade at quarterback with Kyler Murray. A roster that already proved it can win despite major limitations. And a team that, frankly, is being underestimated by both media and fans. This isn't just a playoff hopeful, this is a sleeping giant. And the scary part? They haven't even put it all together yet. So before we move forward and break down the offensive concerns, injuries, and the coaching adjustments that could define this season, I want to hear from you. Do you believe the Vikings' defense can be top 2 in the NFL next season, or even the best? Drop your take below, because what happens next might completely change how we view this team. And here's where things start to get even more interesting. Because as dominant as the defense became, and as promising as the quarterback upgrade looks, there are still underlying factors from last season that could either unlock this team or hold it back again. Let's talk about injuries. Because this wasn't just bad luck, this was a season-altering wave that hit the Vikings at the worst possible positions. The most impactful one? J.J. McCarthy. There's a real argument that if he stays healthy for all 17 games, this team makes the playoffs. Not because he was elite right away, but because development matters, growth matters. And over the course of a full season, that progression could have been enough to turn 1 or 2 losses into wins. And that's all it would have taken. But it didn't stop there. Christian Darrisaw, one of the most important pieces on the entire roster, never truly looked like himself. Coming off that ACL injury, he struggled with consistency and availability. And when your franchise left tackle isn't anchoring the line the way he used to, everything else starts to feel unstable. There were stretches where he'd return, only to leave games early again. On paper, it might say he missed 7 games, but the reality was much worse. Then you look across the roster. Andrew Van Ginkel missing time. Blake Cashman in and out. Brian O'Neill dealing with disruptions. Jonathan Greenard sidelined for multiple games. These aren't role players, these are core pieces. Leaders, game changers. At one point, you're talking about missing your quarterback, both tackles, multiple defensive stars, and key interior linemen. That's not just adversity, that's survival mode. And yet, they still won 9 games. Now imagine this same roster with better health and better quarterback play at the same time. That's where things start to feel dangerous. But there's another layer we need to address, and it might be the most frustrating one from last season. The offensive identity under Kevin O'Connell. There's no denying his ability as a play designer and passing game architect. But last season exposed a clear issue: imbalance. The Vikings leaned too heavily on the pass, even in situations where the run game should have taken priority. We're talking about a team passing the ball around 57% of the time. And in critical short yardage situations, that imbalance became even more glaring. 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, situations where physical football wins games. And yet, the play calling often went in the opposite direction. And that's not just a minor flaw. That's the kind of tendency that costs you games in December and January. But here's where hope comes in. The addition of Frank Smith to the coaching staff could be one of the most underrated moves of the entire offseason. Coming from a system known for its effective run game, Smith brings a philosophy that could finally balance this offense. If he successfully influences O'Connell's approach, especially in short yardage and clock control situations, this offense becomes significantly more complete. And when you combine that with a quarterback like Kyler Murray, who can stress defenses both through the air and on the ground, that's when things start to click. Because, let's be honest, the biggest issue last season wasn't the defense. It wasn't even the injuries. It was the quarterback room. At different points, the Vikings were relying on a mix of struggling options, including Carson Wentz, who ended up being, arguably, the most stable option. And that says everything. That's not a playoff formula. That's a limitation. And now, that limitation is gone. Kyler Murray steps in as QB1, McCarthy develops as QB2, and suddenly, Carson Wentz as QB3 becomes a luxury instead of a necessity. That's a complete reset of the most important position in football. And yet, despite all of this, the Vikings are still being overlooked, still sitting at plus 550 odds to win the division, still treated like an afterthought compared to teams that didn't show nearly the same resilience last season. But here's the reality that shouldn't be ignored. This team was one play away from winning the division last year. One play. And now they're healthier, smarter, better at quarterback, stronger on the coaching staff. So the question isn't whether the Vikings can compete. The question is, how far can they go if everything finally comes together? Because if Kyler Murray plays at a top 10 level, if the defense continues its dominance under Brian Flores, if the run game finds balance with Frank Smith's influence, then this isn't just a good team. This is a team nobody wants to face in January. Now I want to hear from you. And this is the big one. Are you taking the over or the under on 9? 5 wins for the Minnesota Vikings this season. And more importantly, do you believe this team is a true contender or still 1 year away? Drop your take below, hit like if you believe in this squad, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what could be one of the most surprising seasons in Vikings history. Go Vikings!